Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Paradari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Paradari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Paradari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So today we're reading from Canto 10, chapter 59, and it's text 41. Yayacha anamya kirita kotibihi padal sprishan achutam artha sadhanam siddhartha etena vikriyate mahan aho shuranam chatamodik adhyatam yayacha anamya kirita kotibihi padal spirshan achutam artha sadhanam siddhartha etena vikriyate mahan aho shuranam chatamodik adyatam yayacha namya kirita kotibihi padal spirshan achutam artha sadhanam siddhartha etena vikrinyate mahan aho suranam chatamodik ajyatam. Please chant. Yayacha anamya kirita kotibi padal spirshan achutam artha sadhanam siddhartha etena vikriyate mahan aho suranam chatamodik adyatam. Yayacha anamya kirita kotibi svashan achutam artha sadhanam siddhartha etena vikriyate mahan aho suranam chatamodik adyatam. The word for word. Yayacha, he, Lord Indra, begged. Anamya, bowing down. Kirita, of his crown. Kotibi, with the tips, padao, his feet, sparshan, touching, achutam, to Lord Krishna, artha, his, Indra's purpose, sadhanam, who fulfilled, siddha, fulfilled, artha, whose purpose, etena, with him, vigriyate, he quarrels, mayan, the great soul, aho, indeed, suranam, of the demigods, cha, and tamaha, the ignorance, dik, damnation, adyatam, upon their wealth. So the translation for text 41 is as follows. Even after Indra had bowed down to Lord Achyuta, touched his feet with the tips of his crown, and begged the Lord to fulfill his desire, that exalted demigod, having achieved his purpose, chose to fight with the Supreme Lord. What ignorance there is among the gods! To hell with their opulence. And there's a short BBT purport. It is well known that material wealth and power tend to produce arrogance, and thus an opulent life can often be the royal road to hell. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurin Militamyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitamyena Bhutale Swamrupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitam Sha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Roma Padaswami Iti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, in looking at this particular verse, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on the verse, and he makes a statement that in this case, Parikshit Maharaj, who's hearing this narration, and these are his words, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, was astonished to hear that Indra fought with his worshipable Lord Krishna. Sukadev therefore condemned Indra's character in this verse. So that's Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So this fighting that took place with Lord Krishna, meaning by Lord Indra fighting with Lord Krishna, it was over the irritation that Indra had felt over the following matter. So Srila Prabhupada narrates what the circumstance is where Lord Indra came to feel this irritation that led him to fight with Lord Krishna. So this is Srila Prabhupada's narration. Without their permission, Satyabhama had uprooted a parijata tree, which is not to be found on this earth planet. Indra, along with other demigods, offered opposition to Lord Krishna and Satyabhama for taking away the tree. But in order to please his favorite wife Satyabhama, Krishna became determined and adamant. So there was a fight between the demigods and Krishna. As usual, Krishna came out victorious, and he triumphantly brought the Parijata tree chosen by his wife to this earth planet, to Dwarka. So that's Srila Prabhupada writing in Krishna's Supreme Personality of Godhead that describes the problem that arose for Indra that led to his feeling irritation. So it actually says that Satyabhama uprooted the tree. And and of course, because Indra showed opposition, Krishna actually was adamant that Satyabhama should have the tree. And so hence a fight had ensued, and Krishna emerged victorious. Now, the fact that Parikshit Maharaj was astonished to hear about Indra fighting with his worshipable Lord is put into perspective by this very interesting narration of an interaction between Lord Indra and Narada Muni. So this is immediately after this event. And this comes from Nectar of Devotion. When Indra was defeated by Krishna in the matter of taking the Parijata plant from heaven, Narada met Indra and criticized him. And this is what Narada tells Indra. This is immediately after the event. "O Indra, great king of heaven, Krishna has already defeated Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. So what can be said of such an insignificant demigod as yourself?" So that's Narada Muni criticizing Indra directly in front of him and to him. And so, of course, Narada Muni was criticizing Indra jokingly. And Indra enjoyed it. This is according to Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada writing, summary study. And in Narada's statement, it is confirmed that Krishna was able to illusion even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva as well as Lord Indra. I mean, illusion to the extent that they forgot their position in relation to Krishna, and just because of holding on to some particular idea that was in conflict with something that was of importance to themselves, they actually forgot their relationship with Krishna and actually fought with him in some way. So it means that Krishna put them into illusion. So there's no question of Krishna's power to do the same to lesser living entities. So that's the comments in Nectar of Devotion where Narada is criticizing Indra directly. So in the discussion on Krishna's quality of inconceivable potencies, because that's the crux of the matter here, that he has these inconceivable potencies that allow him to put even great demigods into some sort of illusion. The particular quality of having inconceivable potencies and so defeating particular entities has to be analyzed in terms of the nature of the defeat that Krishna achieves, one can say. So the nature of the defeat on the part of Krishna taken into account his inconceivable potencies, it becomes clear in the case of Lord Indra. And backtracking to an earlier time in this relationship between Lord Krishna and Lord Indra, there's a heart-to-heart exchange between the two. So Lord Krishna and Lord Indra, and Lord Indra reveals his mind. And similarly, Lord Krishna reveals his intention. So this is to get some perspective on the relationship between the two. So this is from an earlier chapter in this canto, the 27th chapter. So Lord Indra tells Lord Krishna, "Obeisance is unto you, the supreme personality of Godhead, the great soul who are all-pervading and who reside in the hearts of all. My obeisance is unto you, Krishna, the chief of the Yadu dynasty." So just see that these are words coming from Lord Indra and how he's addressing Lord Krishna and his understanding of who Lord Krishna is. And as Srila Vishwanath explains, or even restates, Lord Indra's statement of his revealing of his heart, this is Srila Vishwanath, being non-material. So this is something of expanding the understanding of Lord Indra about Lord Krishna. Being non-material, your transcendental body is completely pure consciousness without a tinge of illusion. You possess unlimited multifarious energies such as Mahamaya. You are everything. You are the seed of everything and the soul of every creature. Thus I pay respects to you. So you can understand it's quite a deep understanding that Lord Indra has of Lord Krishna. Particularly that he has multifarious energies, particularly his Mahamaya. So Lord Indra understands Krishna has this capacity to put anyone into illusion through Mahamaya. And Lord Krishna reveals his intention with Lord Indra. My dear Indra, it is out of mercy that I stopped the sacrifice meant for you. So this was the context, and I'll explain in a minute. You were greatly intoxicated by your opulence as King of Heaven, and I wanted you to always remember me. So interesting. This particular statement of Lord Krishna is very insightful in terms of what his purpose was to actually put Lord Indra into some sort of illusion space where he's forgetting what he knows of Lord Krishna. And Lord Krishna says, I actually put you into some sort of illusion because you were greatly intoxicated with your opulence as King of Heaven, and I wanted you to always remember me. So this is very interesting. So it's not a punishment that, normally a great personality might do if somebody's gone out of line. There might be some punishment, and the punishment actually may even cause a distance in the relationship. But you notice Krishna's way of doing things, of actually, in a sense, you could say punishing, because it actually makes a prideful person become embarrassed. It's actually to help that person to strengthen their relationship with him. So it's from a very interesting perspective. And Srila Prabhupada notes that since Indra emphatically declared that Krishna is in fact everything, so according to Indra's criterion, because Indra knows this and it's a criterion he's established himself, forgetting Lord Krishna is a state of insanity. This is Srila Prabhupada's comment, that factually it's like Lord Indra's gone insane. So Um, yeah, that's a particular circumstance. I'll come to it in a minute to elaborate a little bit more of what it is that Lord Indra had tried to do that had led to Lord Krishna to assist him, you could say, defeat his pride, but assist him to strengthen the relationship. So, in terms of Lord Krishna, however, Srila Prabhupada explains he reminds us of his supreme existence. So this is Srila Prabhupada writing about how Lord Krishna operates. He's not proudly advertising himself like a mundane politician or entertainer. So Srila Prabhupada puts that. Because, generally politicians have to promote themselves. So somebody who's in a position of some power or vying for power has to go about things in such a way that they stress their own importance and their value to the general populace. So you'll see in America in particular, the way the politicians operate is to actually slander their opponents. So this is the means of, as opposed to talking about their own value, they actually use the tactic of supposedly enhancing their value by slandering the opposition, finding some major flaw in the opposition's argument or the opposition's supposed strength or value to the general populace. So when Lord Krishna actually reminds one of his supreme existence, what his position is, he's not advertising himself like a mundane politician. This is what Srila Prabhupada says. So the Lord is, in fact, self-satisfied in his infinite existence and is trying, and this is Srila Prabhupada, lovingly to bring us back to his own perfect existence as his eternal associate. So this is the motive for Lord Krishna's functioning, where he actually it appears as though he's giving punishment to, you could say, one of his subjects or a person who's in a position of power and leadership. But in actual fact, he's helping that person to come back to the proper understanding as being somebody who's an eternal associate of his. So Srila Prabhupada reiterates this. This is how Srila Prabhupada puts it. From God's point of view, even the mighty king of heaven, Indra, is a mere child, and a naughty child at that. And thus, the Lord, being a caring father, punished his child and brought him back to the sanity of Krishna consciousness. So it's a very interesting thing, making this comparison between a very exalted ruler in the heavenly planets and the relationship that's there with his superior being one of a relationship as a child to a father. He's dependent on the father. So when Krishna acts in the father position, he's actually bringing, what could you say, sanity to that child. Because one has to have the correct understanding when one's functioning. Any action that one's performing, especially in relation to superiors, there has to be the proper understanding. Because if there's not the proper understanding, one takes that position that's forgetting that there's somebody that's superior to one and occupies all the space, takes over. So this is the problem that Indra was experiencing. So he wasn't verbally slandering Krishna as a politician might do to others, and maybe of his ilk or even someone superior to him, like perhaps somebody who's actually been in a position of power for 20 years, but some newcomer may choose to slander that person who's been occupying a position of power for 20 years. So in the case of Indra, he's actually choosing to act in a particular way that challenges Krishna's position, and in fact even causes him to sort of obfuscate Krishna's position. So going back to this emphasis of what Krishna in the superior position, how he's acting towards such insubordination, you could say, he brings sanity, the sanity of Krishna consciousness, that there's awareness of him, understanding of one's position in relation to him. And that position is to be engaged in a transcendental, loving relationship of service to him. You know, that's the position of sanity. And so this kind of punishment that Krishna metes out, it's actually allowing someone to be engaged in his loving service. It's a very unusual position and a very magnanimous position for somebody in a superior position, because it allows someone to remain in a spiritual space, have the quality of Brahman. So one's mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. So it's a very kindly act on the part of Krishna in his magnanimity and his magnanimous action towards somebody, even in such an exalted position of leadership such as Lord Indra. So by his action, Krishna is allowing Lord Indra to be liberated from the mode of passion and material contamination. So the material contamination that came upon Indra was his becoming angry and wanting to vent his anger on the inhabitants of Vrindavan. So this was the way the illusion worked for Lord Indra. Krishna performed a particular action, which was to prevent sacrifice to Lord Indra, and Lord Indra responded in this way. So this is considered that material contamination. He forgot his relationship with Lord Krishna. As opposed to accepting Lord Krishna's arrangement, he actually became angry, and he vented his anger on the inhabitants of Vrindavan. When he understood that the sacrifice that was going to be offered to him by the cowherd men of Vrindavan was now being stopped by Lord Krishna. So here is the material contamination that came over Lord Indra. He's the director of different clouds. So he called in the Samvartika cloud. So this is the anger, not thinking properly, mode of passion operating. He called in the most extreme, most dangerous cloud, because the Samvartika cloud actually devastates the whole cosmic manifestation. It's actually called in at the time of the dissolution of the three worlds. So, but here he called the Samvartika cloud to come and inundate the whole area of Vrindavan with an extensive flood. So he called in the Samvartika cloud, so great was his anger. So Sukadev Goswami, in this section that we're reading today, as per Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he's condemning Indra's character. So this was an earlier time, and in the present time, Indra's performing another action where he's come into the state of illusion. And he's being condemned by Srila Sukadev Goswami. And there's a logic that Srila Sukadev Goswami uses to condemn Lord Indra. So here's the logic. Although Lord Krishna fulfilled Lord Indra's desire, and the term was Arta Sadhanam, to kill Narakasura and bring back Aditi's earrings, so these were the earrings of Lord Indra's mother, still Indra fought with Lord Krishna, though he is the king of the demigods. So notice the problem is being brought up of what it was that was amiss with Lord Indra's behavior. He had actually gone to Lord Krishna for assistance to kill this demon who was actually wreaking quite a bit of havoc, since he was blatantly removing very personal items from great personalities, and he'd taken the earrings of Lord Indra's mother. So this is where it had, personal relevance to Lord Indra. So Lord Indra had actually gone to Lord Krishna to please give assistance with this demon creating all this havoc, Narakasura. And Lord Krishna had obliged, and in fact he had annihilated Narakasura, and he was now coming to Lord Indra, bringing back those earrings of Lord Indra's mother. And Sukadev Goswami, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, how he's putting it, the problem was that still, even with that action that Lord Krishna is performing, still Indra, in a moment, chose to fight with Lord Krishna. So Lord Krishna has fulfilled a very important function for him, assisted him in that way. He's even gone to the trouble to bring back a stolen item. I mean, he had to go into Narakasura's palace and ferret out this stolen item and two other stolen items, but at least this one's in relation to Lord Indra. And still, in a minute, Lord Indra was fighting with Lord Krishna. And the worst part is that he wasn't just an ordinary being that could easily fall into some sort of illusion. He's the king of the demigods. So this is why Sukadev Goswami is, you could say, berating Lord Indra. So there had been a description of Lord Krishna killing Narakasura, and this was that particular moment. So it was a reality, that particular moment. And this is just that description to recap a little bit. Bhaumasura, frustrated in all his attempts, took up his trident to kill Lord Krishna. But even before he could release it, the Lord cut off his head with his razor-sharp chakra as the demon sat atop his elephant. So it was a reality. Lord Krishna had performed that action that brought all this disarray being caused by Bhaumasura or Narakasura that Lord Indra had been very concerned about. Now, Sukadev Goswami, in his narration to Maharaj Pariksha, because this is all a narration, he states, what anger the demigods have. This is his comment. What anger the demigods have. One who is really situated in Sattva Guna will never do such a thing. So this is his comment on what Indra has just done. Taking into account his position and taking into account the circumstance where he'd received help from Lord Krishna. So to understand this mode, because he's saying somebody who's really in the mode of goodness would never do this. So to understand this mode, one can consider that generally living entities, they've got different kinds of bodies, and in terms of the different aspects of their nature. So the nature dictates the kind of body one gets. So presumably somebody in the heavenly planets is predominantly in the mode of goodness. That's why they have a demigod body. And so the person with their particular kind of body, whatever it is, according to the mode that's functioning predominantly, they're induced to act according to their nature. There's no choice. You have a particular nature, you're induced to act according to that nature. And Lord Krishna states, he puts it this way: O sinless one, this is from Bhagavad Gita 14.6, to understand this mode of goodness, because that's the criticism of Sukadev Goswami in terms of Lord Indra. So Lord Krishna explains this mode of goodness. O sinless one, he's addressing Arjuna. The mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. So notice, there's something wonderful about being in the mode of goodness, but still there's some danger. So, and Krishna explains it. There's illumination because there's knowledge, there's understanding. And because of that, then one's actions are going to be armed with knowledge, so therefore one is less likely to perform sinful actions. So in a sense, you could say that somebody in the mode of goodness, being so illumined by knowledge, is unlikely to have too many sinful reactions, because the actions they're performing are not sinful. But here's the danger. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. So it means that one has a certain nature that's in goodness. So one generally thinks in a charitable way. One thinks for the well-being of others. One lives a very regulated life. But one also starts to become accustomed to the happiness that's there from living in that kind of way. So in some sense, there's a kind of learning that happens. Oh, well, these kind of actions performed in these kind of way bring me happiness. So it becomes that the term that's used is conditioning, means a pattern gets established in the mind. Oh, I get happiness from this. So it sort of starts to then get a little selfish. So that's the conditioning part. One in the mode of goodness has a sense of advancement in material knowledge. The person's happiness is due to being more or less free from sinful reactions. So those are the two positive components. But Srila Vishwanath, he continues, because this is the criticism of Lord Indra. So I've tried to give some insight into his criticism, and here his criticism of Lord Indra continues. Furthermore, so this is Srila Vishwanath, explaining Sukadev Goswami's understanding. Furthermore, Indra is not just any demigod, but the king of the demigods, and even he manifested the mode of ignorance. So this is the criticism. Even in that very exalted position, so he's not, just somebody in the mode of goodness, somebody residing in the heavenly planets. He's actually the leader of everybody, the leader of even others who are in a position of power and rulership. But he manifested the mode of ignorance. So that's the criticism that's there, that his position did not call for that kind of action, showing this kind of ignorance. And again, to understand what mode of ignorance is, Krishna puts it this way, talking again to Arjuna, son of Bharata: know that this mode of darkness, born of ignorance, is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The result of this mode are madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned soul. So notice, anybody can be subjected to the mode of ignorance. This is what Krishna says: all embodied living entities may fall into this delusion of ignorance. And of course, if one stays there, madness, laziness, and sleep are the results. Because that's the conditioning of being, or what's learned, the pattern that gets learned in the mind through functioning in this kind of delusion, just functioning in a very lazy kind of way and sleeping a lot. Madness is the particular result. So Srila Prabhupada, and that's from Bhagavad Gita 49, Srila Prabhupada compares the two modes of being. In goodness, by development of knowledge, one can understand what is what. This is Srila Prabhupada. But the mode of ignorance is just the opposite. Everyone under the spell of the mode of ignorance becomes mad. And a madman cannot understand what is what. So that's Srila Prabhupada doing a comparison between the two. And remember, the criticism is that Lord Indra fell into the mode of ignorance. So it means that his understanding was had gone awry. So, of course, this is Srila Prabhupada continuing, in the mode of goodness, persons come to be conditioned to feel that they are advanced in knowledge and thus better than others. Indeed, this was Lord Indra's thinking. So Srila Prabhupada just said that persons in the mode of goodness feel that they are advanced in knowledge, and as a result of that, they start to think they're better than others. So that's the problem. That's the danger part of being in the mode of goodness, starting to make comparisons with others. So this was actually what happened to Lord Indra, because his thinking at the time when he summoned the Samvartika clouds was this, and he just here he's thinking, just see the impudence of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. This is Lord Indra. They are simply inhabitants of the forest, but being infatuated with their friend Krishna, who's nothing but an ordinary human being, they have dared to defy the demigods. So see how the problem has happened in the mind? He's seen the inhabitants of Vrindavan as insignificant. No, they're just forest dwellers. And also, Krishna is just an ordinary human being. The problem of being in the mode of goodness, even with the knowledge he has, and we heard, he understands Krishna's position perfectly well. The mode of ignorance set in, completely loses the understanding, completely. So by defying the authority of the demigods, the inhabitants of Vrindavan will suffer in material existence. This is Indra's view. Having neglected the sacrifice to the demigods, they cannot cross over the impediments of the ocean of material existence. So he's completely lost his proper perspective, completely. That actually, even ordinary persons, they're actually dependent, this is now Indra's understanding, they're actually dependent on the sacrifices they make to demigods in order to elevate their consciousness and to become free from material thinking and material functioning, and so being caught up in the modes of material nature. So Krishna is saying, Lord Indra is saying, it's all dependent on the sacrifices they make to demigods to be free of that. The delusion that's there is incredible, taking into account what he actually knows of Lord Krishna, his relationship with Lord Krishna. So in the current scenario, Krishna had gone to the heavenly kingdom, Amaravati, it was called, to present King Indra with his mother's earrings, which had been lost to Bhaumasura, and Indra had been very glad to receive them. But when the Parijata tree from the heavenly kingdom was taken by Lord Krishna, Indra had fought with him. He'd even offered his prayer. He'd even tipped his head at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Like here we hear that the tips of his crown were touching the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. But as soon as his purpose had been served, he became a different creature. So this is when the mode of ignorance sets in. And this is explained by Srila Prabhupada. He generalizes, Srila Prabhupada, that materialistic men are always interested in their own profit. And for this purpose, they can offer any respect to anyone. But when their personal interest is over, they're no longer friends. It's completely heartless, the exchange. So this is that material contamination that's set in with Indra, that his purpose had been achieved. He did the dutiful external etiquette, but in a moment, the minute something was done that was irritating to his mind, he actually immediately fought with Lord Krishna, meaning that his personal interests got taken care of, the material contamination, and now he's no longer friends with Krishna. It took one moment. And Srila Vishwanath, he asks this question: what anartha does wealth not create? That is the point. So anartha is the obstruction to that loving service to Lord Krishna. And particularly Srila Vishwanath's pointing to one of the leading causes of this impediment to loving service to Lord Krishna being wealth. And particularly in the case of Lord Indra, that blockage, that anartha to loving service to Krishna was, he's saying, is created by the extreme wealth of Lord Indra. That comfort, that sense of power and prestige. It's influenced by the extraordinary opulence and wealth of the kingdom he's he's in charge of, and which in this particular case, just one little item in that great wealth was removed from him. Even you could say an organic item, a tree, a living entity, one was removed, and the anartha got exposed. This blockage to his loving service to Lord Krishna became completely visible. So that's the some thoughts on this particular verse today. If there's any further elaboration, thought, comment, question.
Hare Krishna Mata. This topic was very significant today. I thought the topic of insanity. Prabhupada describes insanity as forgetfulness of Krishna. One more definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. Lord Indra, given so many circumstances with the Parijatika tree, defeating Narkasura and Krishna returning the Indra's mother's earrings. So Lord Indra recognizes that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But he is not in a spiritually fit condition. That would be insanity, because spiritually fit condition he forgets Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The spiritual fit condition of a conditioned soul will be to have a loving service towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it seems like from this story and the stories that we see in our scriptures, that as the life progresses, the this disease of materialism is a progressive disease, that it increases more and more and more. So as the life progresses, there should be higher and higher degree of surrender, so that a spiritually fit condition can be maintained with connection to Krishna, a loving service. That was my understanding. If something.
Okay, thank you. You were giving us a summary of what you'd understood from the subject matter, and perhaps drawing a comparison between what's the two positions are, namely that with material functioning, um, there's, um, I guess, a distancing from Lord Krishna, and with spiritual functioning going through life, there's increased surrender. That was your statement. So just making a comparison that way. Yes. The the particular, I guess, tragedy of not functioning in a relationship with Lord Krishna means that, as opposed to freeing oneself from all those patterns that are in the mind, be they that are part of one's nature and part of how one's functioning, and that are getting more and more entrenched. One is, the the terminology that's used in the Vedas is that one is actually getting bound up, so you're actually getting more imprisoned. Uh, Versus the other position that you brought up, that through cultivation of the relationship with Lord Krishna, functioning with the understanding that one's a soul and therefore performing loving service to him, it's actually allowing one to, break those bonds. Those bonds are being broken. So hence one is actually freeing oneself. So it certainly is a bit of a tragedy if one has not taken to that path that is going to allow one to actually break free of the bonds of um, created by one's nature, and therefore the actions impelled by one's nature, and then getting more and more entrenched in particular patterns of behavior, and not seeing beyond that, and not even understanding that one is bound by those patterns. So yes, indeed, the path of surrender is a glorious path, and a very befitting path if one is a human being, and, what to speak, a demigod. It may be, we're hearing how a demigod is getting subject to certain patterns, and that's a much more elevated consciousness. So, yes, it's certainly a tragedy if one hasn't taken to the path of surrender. There's some question in distance.
Thank you for the nice class. So, I was just reading this verse that it is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties, even though they may be faulty, than uh, another's duty. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties, for to follow another's path is dangerous. So, according to that verse, let's say we have a warrior in the battlefield and he tries to get into the mode of goodness and surrender, then he's going to die and he will not be able to do the justice to the very fabric he's made of, which is like defending the weak and the poor, or not, sorry, I'm sorry, not the poor but the weak. His main fabric is made up of action and fighting for the weak, and that is not going to do justice to him. And then again, if we take the example of Naga sadhus who live in the mode of ignorance, who live in their own world, regardless of the material world, and they start thinking about what other people are thinking about them, then they will not be also be able to do justice to their own selves, where they are communing with God in the mode of ignorance. We like our perception of the mode of ignorance, but they might be in the highest mode of goodness. So it's very relative how we perceive the mode of goodness, the mode of ignorance, and the mode of rajas, that is action or passion, because it all stems from the internal potency of the Lord. So that's my question. So thanks
Mm.
for.
Okay. So, what you were pointing to is that there may be a problem if one is actually taking to spiritual life from the point of view of, you gave the example of a warrior, where you were saying that, the warrior may not be able to execute his duty if he's trying to be in the mode of goodness. Well, that would be then that the understanding of mode of goodness is that he does nothing. He doesn't fight. He doesn't perform his duty of protection. But that would be an incorrect understanding of the mode of goodness, because the mode of goodness means that actually uh, you have a certain position in society, you understand what your position is, and you perform the duties in relation to that position. So that's the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness doesn't mean that one is just sitting quietly somewhere and communing with God, as you mentioned. That's not actually the definition of the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness is understanding what position you have in society and what duties you have, and performing those duties. That's the mode of goodness. So, for a warrior, for him to be in the mode of goodness means that he is fighting, he is performing his duty, he is doing his protective function in society. And then your second thought that you expressed, that actually it's a perceptual thing, how one understands the mode of goodness or the mode of ignorance. Um, that is not accurate, because it all boils down to what position one occupies in society and the duties that come with the position one occupies in society. So it's not perceptual, it has to do with performing the duties according to one's position in society. So, like Indra here was used as an example, where he's actually a ruler in the heavenly planets. In fact, he heads all the demigods. So his position is certainly one of being in a very elevated position of the mode of goodness, where he is spiritually advanced, means he's very much in contact with Krishna. He understands himself as a spirit soul. He is actually performing his duties on the external level of perhaps protecting, but on the spiritual level, he's always remembering Krishna and performing those duties for Krishna. So, yeah, there has to be the external performance of duty, and internally also performing those duties for Krishna for them to be considered spiritual. So it's not that they're separate things, they're combined.
Yeah, that definitely helps, but one gets into a certain mode, like it's called also the mode of goodness ignorance. So once when one is in the mode of goodness, one is sattvic, one is forgiving, and one is like surrendered, and one is like many other qualities are there. And so when one starts to get into that mode, it is not possible for him to fight. Like when Buddha gave the example of all his devotees, then Anath Pindika, the person who had killed 99 people, and he was the 100th man whom he was supposed to kill, he was not able to kill him because his mode changed to the mode of goodness. And the moment his mode changed to the mode of goodness, he was unable to act in the mode of violence, because his whole fabric or his whole interior being changed. So that's why many people say that then there led to a weak nation, but that's another story. So the point being that it cannot actually practically go together.
Yeah, I think you've repeated the same idea that you'd mentioned earlier on. So I think I addressed it as best I could. So I guess it requires a little bit of processing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your class, Mataji. So many good points. I was thinking about the first thing, since we don't have so much time, but my question is, can a person, if a person's not attached to their opulence, and they just consider it not their property, does that still cause the person to be distracted or taken away from Krishna consciousness, if they're thinking, well, this is not even my property, these are not my things, this is Krishna's? So is that still considered the type of opulence that will take a person off track?
So the question is, if a person is thinking in their mind that different property or even different wealth that they have belongs to Krishna, does that actually take them away from Krishna thinking like that? Well, the the particular statement of Indra was very insightful, that Krishna's in everything, and so basically also as the supreme being, everything comes from him, and so automatically everything has a connection with him. So if you're operating understanding that everything has a connection with him, that's the correct way to operate. And then in terms of what your relationship is to particular objects, if you have that kind of understanding that, okay, everything is Krishna's property, then you have to examine what's your role in relation to those objects. And your role, if certain objects are in your possession, so to speak, it means that you have a certain duty to. So your duty in relation to objects is to actually care and maintain those objects. That's on knowing that they belong to Krishna and they've been put in your care. So you do have a relationship with those objects, and it's one of caring for, maintaining, and keeping in good order. So that is your part in the picture. So you understand who it ultimately belongs to, but you have they've been put in your care. So you have to actually do the maintenance. Yeah. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.